I did. I actually went to school for finance. That's not where I started though, but that's where I ended.
No, no, no. Wait, tell us where you started. You can't do that. You can't say that and not tell us.
Well, when you start out at school and you're a West Indian child, it's one of three things: doctor, lawyer,
Doctor.
engineer,
There you go.
right?
Which one
And
did you
so
go?
I went the doctor route,
Okay, okay.
right? And then I was like, not really. So maybe physical therapy, right? And so I navigated into physical therapy, and then there was a period where I actually got sick. And so when I got sick, I kind of reevaluated whether I wanted a career that was so physically strenuous. Um, and so I actually looked into actuarial science. Uh,
Hold
yeah,
up. Do, do, you know that that's what I studied for my first degree, right?
stop it!
Yes. That's
Get
what my
out of
first
here!
degree is in. Yeah.
Did you do any of the exams?
Yeah, the first one. I passed the
Me
first one.
too.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, okay. Wow. I've never heard anyone else that I know like do that, like besides the people I went to school with. I
Yeah,
just say, okay, actuarial science. I've never heard that. So sorry,
yeah,
listeners and viewers. That was definitely like
yeah. That was
off
a
the.
nerd moment.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. And that's the people you want to tell people what actuarial science is because I think it's good for people to know. Yeah,
Oh,
what that is.
actuarial science. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Actuarial science is practical math in the nerdiest way you can possibly think about it.
It's people calculate your risk. Yeah.
They're calculating your risk. So you're looking at the chances of you being in a car accident, the what your Medicare insurance needs to look like, what your retirement plan needs to look like, how much money you need to put in to get a certain amount at the end, and what's the risk of you living long enough to use that. Like it's what
Yeah.
happens when you go to the bank and you deposit your money into the bank and the bank decides how much interest rate you're gonna get because they're calculating the risk of you pulling that money out. And so they're calculating how much money they can make, how long that much. It's nerdy mathematics, and
Okay.
it's
All right,
beautiful.
Prudence. Let's get back. We'll after this. We'll talk about this. So you said started off doctor, physical therapy. You mentioned actuarial science. Then
Mhm.
like, how does it? Where does this journey go
Where does this
towards
journey? Right.
into
So,
finance?
ultimately, what I did do is I finished with a degree in finance. That's what I did. And in the middle of that, now you have this degree with finance. You're like, what am I going to do with it? So my first job was working with a financial planner with MetLife. Loved that job. I think that job has marked me in such a way that for the rest of my life from then on, everything that I have done has had that kind of influence. Because what I did at that job was this planner that I worked for, he targeted small businesses, and he worked with, so when you think of like your bakery down the street or your ballet school down the street, he worked with these people. They would literally come in with a box of receipts. And when I say a box of receipts, I really mean, this is dating myself. Like it really was a box of receipts. And my job was to make sense of the receipts, to help them determine how much money they actually made, how much money they were actually spending, how much they could pay themselves, how much they could set aside for retirement, what their insurance planning needs to look like, what their tax planning needs to look like, what their estate planning needs to look like.
Wow.
It was phenomenal. Like I was just marveled, because I would go in with these people. They would have literally a bunch of confusion going on, and it was my job to make it make sense for them based on their lives, based on their goals, based on what it is that they wanted to achieve. And it was all individualized. So what
Wow.
happened for the Hines family would not happen for the Brown family because
Gotcha.
they had different needs.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. This is such a fascinating story. So our guest today is Prudence Rufus from Master Your Mint. And Prudence, you're helping us understand like this started your interest in financial management started from a young age.
Mhm,
Then you talked about even going to school for something else, but being detoured back to this.
mhm,
Now, as I read in your bio, you talked about being a banker and some of the other things.
mhm.
Um, Talk to us then about getting into entrepreneurship because we a lot of times we're prepared coming out of school to work for someone else. No shade on that. But at
Mhm.
some point in your journey, you started entrepreneurship. And I want to know like the first thing you started where you said, I want to do something of my own to generate income. Talk to us about that.
Ooh. Well, it probably wasn't on my own.
Okay.
I also married this wonderful human being who has an entrepreneurial spirit of himself. And so he ran an insurance agency for a very, very long time. And as his spouse, I made sense of the finances of that. Well, there came a point in our lives where I had this corporate dream and I was working the corporate job and it was good until it started interrupting with the way that I wanted to parent.
Mm.
And I said, okay, this is not working for my mental health and for what I believe my children need. So I left the job. Well, in leaving the job, now I had more time for my hobbies. And at that time, the hobby that kind of dominated my time was photography. Because when you are a stay-at-home parent, it gets you out the house, it gets you talking to people. It was stimulating all my creative juices. It was doing that. I was getting a lot of I'm sorry. My camera was getting a lot of invitations to birthday parties and baby showers and weddings, and all of those
Were you
things.
charging?
No, I wasn't charging. It was a hobby. I
Okay.
was just doing it because I loved it. I loved doing it. People knew that I loved doing it. I had the equipment to do it. Looking back, the photos were terrible, but that's a part of the journey of evolving your ministry. And I was just doing it. And my husband said to me one day, he said, "You're gone every weekend. You want new camera equipment. You probably need to make this a business." And I cringed because I didn't want to. But I also knew that in order for me to keep doing it the way that I wanted to do it, in order for me to grow creatively in the way that I wanted to grow creatively, I had to start charging. I was either going to start charging so I could grow as a creative, or I was going to have to stop doing it because it was no longer, it didn't make sense. I would become stagnant.